So federalism. Federalists and anti-federalists, you might recall, were fighting over how much control the federal government should have and how much power the state should have. Well, now we're going to get back into that argument a little bit because it never really went away. It's gone in many different directions, but it's still here. So federalism it's a division of power between the federal and state government, the national and the state governments, deciding who gets what authorities. And there's two kinds. You've got an example here on the screen. You got the marble cake federalism, which is based on a pragmatic mixing of authority and programs among national, state, and local governments. They're all interweaved with each other to like one big giant conglomerate mess. Or maybe not so mess. Maybe it's working great because everyone's so in tune with each other. That's your opinion. Then there's layer cake federalism. Very strict delineation of authority, very clear and strict programs among levels of government. So it's very clear and there's very hard separations between what each piece of government, state, local, national, can do. So back to the power of the states versus the federal government. Here are powers that the states do and the federal government stays the heck out of. They got no business in any of these things. First, setting up local government. Are we going to have mayors or council members, or how are we going to organize our cities, our counties, our states? Do we have a governor? Do we have a peacock? Whatever. The states set it up, and the federal government cannot tell us or force us to go a different way. So if one day we decide we want to start voting for barnyard animals for governor, and our state constitution allows it, then president will just have to deal with it, talking to barnyard animals, because we have the power as a state to decide how to set up our government. We set up our own public school systems. Now, there are exceptions to this to some degree when it comes to trying to get funding from the federal government, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But what kind of school systems? Do we allow charter schools like Options for Youth? Does the state not allow charters like Options for Youth? What kind of adult school programs are out there? What are the grade requirements, or what are the grade requirements for graduation? The credit requirements, 2 years of math, 3 years of math. The states get to decide how those things get determined. The federal government cannot make those decisions. Health and safety issues like traffic. Okay, speed limits in California can be very different from speed limits in other states. Not significantly, it's going to be pretty close, but they could be different. I mean, California can start saying you can drive 75, 80 miles per hour in certain zones, but if Nevada says you got to top out at 50, then you better watch out when you cross state lines, because each state comes up with their own health, safety, laws, codes, all that kind of thing. Oversee business. Federal government only gets involved with business if it's kind of business that goes through state lines. So it's going back and forth across the country, because then it's a bigger nationwide corporation. But like just a restaurant that you own, or a business where you sell things, products, if it's just within your state, the state will tell you what the rules are and the regulations, and the federal government's got to stay the heck out of it. And finally, conduct elections. Even elections for president. How we do those elections, how you vote, what the ballot looks like. Can you vote by mail? Is it going to be an electronic vote? Each state funds and organizes those things completely on their own. Now, those powers that the state alone has aren't the only powers that the state has. There are other powers as well, known as shared powers. And those are powers that both the state and federal government have authority over. For example, one way in which the federal government and the state government work together to use the same power is law enforcement. Federal government can assist local law enforcement in a number of ways. For example, they can share information. If the federal government is trying to track a certain individual down or a group down, and they know that a local law enforcement team has also been searching for those same people or individual, well, they can share information so they can find the guy faster, so they're not doing double the work. Similarly, they can share resources. Of course, that includes information, but also it could be sharing manpower if they just need more people to search a large area. It could be technology. security. And finally, the other thing that happens is often federal government agents will train local police on how to handle situations that maybe the federal law enforcement agents deal with more often, but local police may never have to deal with, so they can receive that training from federal agents rather than go into a dangerous situation without the proper training. State constitutions. As of the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, states have to come up with their own constitution before they become a state. Now they can change it afterwards, and just like America can change, or Congress can change the United States Constitution, but the states can change their own and amend it in many different ways, just like the United States government can. It's similar to the U.S. Constitution in form. There's similar idea and purpose, similar idea and purpose, but they're much more detailed and extremely larger. I don't mean to pick on Utah. This is just a graphic I found. It's not just Utah, it's all the states. Because there's a lot more things they got to figure out. They do have Supreme Courts to help clarify things, but because laws don't affect as many people as federal laws, they make a lot more to clarify things to try to limit the Supreme Court's power, the state Supreme Court's power in those states, and many other reasons too. It's just a lot more easier to get laws and add to the law, get laws proposed because you as a citizen have a lot more influence to make state laws and get state laws voted on and passed than you ever will in the federal government, where you have almost no influence. And finally, there's something called the Constitutional Initiative. This is the state amendment process. They may not call it an amendment to the Constitution. They'll call it a constitutional initiative, except, like I was saying earlier, you, the people, get, as citizens, propose constitutional amendments. Now, it might start in the not the federal government, in the state legislature, or the governor, or a mayor, but it doesn't have to. It can start with you, and you can force the state to vote on constitutional initiatives, which again are the same things as amendments, only for state constitutions instead of the federal constitution. The national constitution, the U.S. Constitution, that's changes to there are called amendments. And one last thing I want to clarify before the video ends is the shared power of taxation. There are 3 different ways that the state can tax people. One is sales tax. You're very familiar with this. You've seen it on every receipt you've ever received. There's also an excise tax. This is a type of tax that you may not use the word excise or hear it, but it is something you pay all the time. These are additional taxes that are added on to specific products. For example, cigarettes. Of course, you pay a sales tax, but there are additional excise taxes that have been added on to cigarettes. And finally, there are income taxes. The federal government can take taxes out of your paycheck and also charge you at the end of the year. The state can do this as well. Again, income is the money that you make for a living from your job.